The old bookstore on the corner of Elm Street was a tomb where time had been buried. Sunlight, even on the brightest of days, seemed to be actively repelled by the grimy windows, leaving the aisles in a perpetual thick gloom. The air, heavy with a dry, choking perfume of mold and petrified despair, was a comfort to Clara, who had taken over the shop from her reclusive aunt. She was closing up one Friday evening when she found a book she had never seen before. It was tucked away in a high shelf in the back, a small leather-bound volume that felt disturbingly like human skin. It had no title. The pages were yellowed and brittle, filled with elegant looping handwriting. A web of intricate script that seemed to shift on the page. As Clara began to read, a chill unlike any she had ever felt before snaked up her spine. Reaching for her heart, the words told the story of the bookstore not as a place of business, but as a liminal space, a trap, and the author, a previous owner, was the bait. The diary described a shadow that feeds on silence. It detailed how the entity would wait until the shop was empty, manifesting in the quiet corners, growing stronger with each passing hour of stillness. The only way to keep it at bay was to fill the space with sound, the rustle of pages, the murmur of a customer, the soft chime of the bell on the door. But the author's final entry was a gash of blood-red ink, a desperate warning. It learns, it waits, in silence. A sudden draft made the bell on the door jingle softly. Clara's heart hammered against the ribs, a frantic drum in the oppressive quiet. She was alone. The streetlights outside cast long, skeletal shadows through the grimy windows. Shadows that seemed to crawl and shrink back from her light. A page in the book turned on its own. It was a new entry in the same elegant hand. "Hello, Clara." A whisper, faint as the rustle of a moth's wings, brushed against her ear. It wasn't a voice, but an unsound, a vacuum of one that made the air feel thin and brittle. She slammed the book shut and shoved it back onto the shelf. The floorboards above creaked, not with a footfall, but with a rhythmic, heavy drag. She knew the second-story apartment was empty, though. Clara scrambled to the front, fumbling with her keys. The silence was no longer a comfort, it was a physical presence. A weight on her chest that made it difficult to breathe. She could feel it closing in, the air growing colder, heavier, a pressure that made her ears pop. Behind her, a book fell from the shelf with a sickening thump. Then another, thrown with a violent finality. And then another. The rhythmic falling was like the slow, deliberate beating of her heart, about to burst. She found the right key and slid it into the lock. Just as she turned the knob, a voice, this time directly behind her. "Don't go." It was her aunt's voice, a rusted hinge of voice that should not have been possible, for her aunt had not spoken a word in the last decade of her life. The doorbell shrieked as she burst onto the street. The sound, a beautiful, frantic scream. She ran, not looking back, the jingle of the bell echoing in her mind. But as she reached the end of the block, she heard a new sound, a different kind of chime. It wasn't lonely or soft. It was the clear, solitary toll of a funeral bell, impossibly close. The shadow had learned it was no longer waiting for silence. It was bringing the silence with it. The sound of the bell was the last thing she ever heard, and then there was only silence. Absolute, final, suffocating silence.